It's not what I want. Wait a second. I'm gonna sneeze. I'm feeling it. Jeez, that was a big one. Oh man. All right. So it's already 11:30 my time. So I'm just going to hop right into the main event of the night. I've actually been doing a little bit of coding offline. I've been collecting some more data about how I want this embeddings app to work. I've been playing around with a few things to just see how I want the overall flow to function. And I've come across some things that I'm like, oh, this works and this doesn't work. And a big part, I think, of software development is knowing when enough is enough for the thing that you're building. And that's not always clear because it's really trivial to keep adding features. And what we call that is feature bloat. But when you really think of the core of the thing that you're trying to solve for, there's usually a pretty good stopping point. And finding that stopping point involves just a balance of understanding the technology that you're working with and the realistic impact of what you can achieve in time. So let's talk about realism here for a second. So I'm going to switch over to Obsidian. Oh, my hotkey actually worked for once. That's awesome. Good for you, OBS. Okay, so, we are working on the embeddings app, and specifically, I want to talk about a few things. So I want to talk about running array on a flat array of files to be passed in, what to do with regards to a cron job, passing URLs back and forth in a form that iOS shortcuts can understand, and then a code review of the code that I've already written and talking about how that came to be. So I'm going to hop into Chrome actually real quick and show you what I've got so far. So if I go to localhost 8000/docs, hopefully my Docker instance is still running. It is. So last time I was live, I just had this one. I had the search, which would allow you to kind of like search for, let's say that we want to search for US president. And then we hit this execute button, and then it's going to call for a second, and then it's going to say George Washington and John Adams. Ignore these two. It's just that there's only 4 documents in this test database, and I'm having it return the top 10 results. So these two are correct, right? Like these were both US presidents. One thing that I did add to it now is that it does Obsidian URIs. So, a big goal of this whole project was to be able to do this search on my phone wherever I am, and then automatically get an Obsidian advanced URI that I can open in a particular vault and with the file path preloaded. So it'll just automatically call that file path. So that works great. I also added a scroll functionality that allows you to search for file names. So let's say that we wanted to search, we have to search for exact file name matches. So if we wanted to do the Arctic Circle .markdown, we can go here, hit this, hit execute, and then we can see the ID of what it is, as well as the vector, which I put as null because it's just 1,000 numbers, which is 12,000 numbers actually, which isn't helpful. It's a lot of numbers. And I'm going to move myself up here. And then the final one I added, this one I think is kind of like probably a little bit more clever than it needs to be, but I needed a way to introspect the database and get every single file name that was in there. And there's not a traditional SQL call. The closest thing I could find was this pagination, which isn't here in this page. I don't think. No, I don't think so. Let's go to the documentation. So the point has this scroll points thing, and basically what I wanted to do was search it in quadrant without a filter. And when I search it without a filter, I'm able to find all of them. But then you have the limit problem, but you can solve it with pagination by using this next page offset. So I'll show the code for that in a bit. But basically what this does is this just returns all of the items inside the database and their ID. And this is going to be helpful in a second when I discuss what this is for. So this is kind of what I've been building. I'm going to jump into VSC. So I added a lot of libraries and I'll do a code review after I do a little bit more coding because I have a few more ideas that I want to tackle. But basically this is just I added a logger, and I went through and I made it so that, this, like I said, this scroll functionality is matching for file name. This get all function is doing a limit of 1,000 and then doing this next page offset and then appending that to this and then basically just running forever. I think that this might break if it's smaller than the page, but I'm not actually sure. So I'm going to have to run a few more tests before I throw the whole kitchen sink at it. And then I wrote this file comparison function, which goes through and compares all of the files recursively. So it goes through a directory recursively, gets all the file names, and then checks the files between the points list, which comes from the database, and the file name. And then I'm just comparing those. This creates the Obsidian Advanced URI URL using URL lib. This is the recursive function, comparing lists, create embeddings, create collection upload data. I added a few more API calls for get and scroll, and that's pretty much what I've got up to. This is for the Obsidian URIs. The next big part of this problem to solve for this particular project is the hosting problem, which is a pretty large problem. It's not unbeatable, but the thing is, like, when I create apps like this, I usually have to kind of like think about if I want to host it on like DigitalOcean, or if I want to create like a serverless instance, or use like a Render or Vercel. And some options are available to me because this is not just a web app. This is a web app with a very particular specialized database that runs in a Docker instance. So what's happening in my computer is, I'll show you. So let's say that this is my computer. This is my computer, and currently I have two processes running. So I have the Qdrant Docker instance, and I have this Fast API server, Fast API. So these two are in direct communication with each other. So they need to always be online and be able to talk to each other at like a moment's notice, because whenever something it gets called in the server, then this updates the Qdrant Docker. So this is all fine when it's just operating on my computer. But now we're going to add a new client into the mix, my cell phone, iPhone. So my iPhone is out here and doesn't have access to Fast API or this Qdrant Docker, but this server does have the ability to talk to external things, in this case, my iPhone. So, usually what I would do is that I would just be interfacing with the server, and maybe I would be using something like Firebase or something like that. Firebase. So if these two were interacting, then I would just use an API call. But I need, because I'm using this Qdrant Docker, I actually need to host this as well. So let's say that needs to be hosted as well. So again, this is kind of trivial in the sense like, oh, we'll just put a computer in the cloud, similar to functionally to this computer, but that costs money. And I'm also trying to figure out just like the best way of doing it. Not that I'm opposed to spending money for this, but I am trying to limit how much this project costs to be able to be useful in my day-to-day life. But so basically what's going to go down on my iPhone is that there is a shortcuts app. So the shortcuts app allows me to open a text box. So let's say that this is a text box. And once you type in that text box, it can actually make an API call to Fast API, which can send back the data to this result here. And we can say, we can do the choose from options. And then the choose from options can open them as a URL. And I actually already built this I was playing around in bed with my shortcuts app, and I was able to get this to function relatively independently. But now I actually need to wire it all up. I won't be doing the server hosting on stream because that's going to involve a lot of like private credentials and API keys and stuff that I just can't show on stream. But I am going to talk about what I'm going to be doing because I do think that that's valuable and will allow others, if they are interested in creating their own embedded search experience, either not make the same mistakes that I did or make different mistakes. So this is kind of where my head's at. So if there's like a contextual reasoning for why I'm doing what I'm doing, this would hopefully make sense. So this is, again, all fine when this is all operating inside my computer. But basically, let's say that I copy this. That didn't work. Okay, let's group this selection and then copy and paste it. It'd be sick if it'll let me copy and paste. Copy. Oh, copy, paste. Okay, yeah, right. So now this is my computer over here, but this is actually a remote server. So now there's a new player in the game. So this remote server is going to have all of this functionality that was just discussed, but then my computer actually only is doing one thing after that. So this is going to be my computer. So my computer only really has one task to do. It has to keep the entire list of files, and then it also has to have a script that grabs all file names and posts to server. So this actually needs to go from here, whip all all the way around here and make a fast API call from my computer. And that's kind of like the overall. So I basically need to take the logic that's hosted on my computer, rip it all out, post it in this remote server object, just have my computer keep track of the list of files that I'm going to be sending and the script that's going to listen to the files. And then when my phone calls this fast API, it'll actually not be calling this, it will be calling this fast API. So that's kind of the plan. And that's what I'm doing. Most of it, like I said, is kind of already done. I think what I needed to decide, the things that I have to do left, is kind of like how frequently this search will run, if I'm okay with just running it manually, or if I wanted it to happen automatically on a cron job. And a cron job sounds like a lot of work and I don't really want to do that work. I already kind of overwhelmed myself a little bit with this streaming thing, I think, and I just don't have the energy, I think, to add that with all these other projects kind of being held over my head right now. So I want to make sure that I keep and just for the sake of the simplicity of the code too, right? Like this architecture looks pretty good to me. It makes sense to me, and it's something that I could be confident in fixing the different parts when they break or something like that. And this actually won't be here. This is just an example thing that I wanted to show. Delete and delete. So yeah, I'm just gonna hop back into Visual Studio Code and do a little bit of coding, and then I'll chime in every now and then. I'll probably turn on some tunes and just jam out for a little bit and write some code. And then I'm going to I was like reviewing, so I posted a video today on my channel. So yeah, I posted this video today on my channel. I'm almost wearing the same shirt. Look at that. This one just has a little bit of a Ahsoka layer to it, but it's basically the same look that I'm hitting. You can almost see me talking to me. It's like that Bo Burnham script, or that Bo Burnham skit. But yeah, so this video is 51 minutes long. It's a long video, and it involves me basically coding this app from scratch, which I think is useful. And I found it interesting to like go back over with the editing thing, but I don't know how much of my channel I want to be this type of content. So I think that even though I do still want to code on stream, I might just chime in intermittently for like code review type comments, as opposed to talking away my whole process. Because when I was doing that, there was just a lot more editing to cover, and it felt more like stair step, which is super helpful. But I felt overall like it was just a really long video, and maybe like kind of like not too hyper engaging for an audience, when I could kind of donate my time to other things and have it be a little bit more engaging. So, but I don't know, if it gets a lot of views and a lot of likes and does well, then I might reconsider and do a little bit more out loud coding. But until that day comes, then I shall listen to music and write code.